Hello, Digidestins. This is Kyle D, better known as Ridemyavatar, and today we're going to talk about BT-6 in a nutshell. This format is going to be crazy good as long as it releases on time and no delays, as there are some rumors, and we won't go into that right now. Leave down in the comments down below if you don't like any of my picks, and maybe you have something better to use in your opinion that ranks better. If not, hopefully you smash that like button, you subscribe to this channel. Remember, supporting the channel does help out in the long game, and we're hoping to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Hopefully we do, and I got some playmats to raffle off by that time. So guys, remember, like, comment, subscribe, and let's dive right into the video. So first off, let's go over Red. Red is quite the big shots this time around this format. We have Jesmons, we have Bond of Courage, we have even Gallantmon coming back, and we have, Shine Greymon from the trial deck was a nasty card in this format, even though it's slowly got crept out because of Jesmon, but that trial deck alone could still be a budget-friendly option. Let's go over all the red decks you could possibly play. First off, let's go over Red Greymon. Sadly, even with the Nokia builds that help this deck out, it still struggles a little bit because the format is such a faster paced format than it. Getting to Shine War Greymon sometimes just doesn't get you through the punch, so we're going to put it at 3. Sadly, it does counter a lot of decks, like we have Security Control, and we do have the deck that is most known for being top dog in this format, and that's Beelzestar, the Three Musketeer build. It's just too slow to really go into it crazily. It's such a big risk gain reward thing that you are better off just playing other decks just to get the job done, in my opinion. So let's dive into the next one. We're going to talk about the amazingness of the Ancient Greymon list. Ancient Greymon got a really nice support in this set with the fact it got the Flamemon with the piercing effect. This allows you to pretty much combo with Gallantmon and this card for a bit, doing something similar to what Ancient Grumon with Bond of Friendship kind of does. I think this deck is definitely a tier solid 2. It's a little bit better because the consistency of the combo is very easily achievable compared to just worrying about Greymon swinging in and just having Omnimons to out things. It's definitely pretty solid. I'm going to talk about my boy Shoutmon DX. The Shoutmon deck I still love it to this day. The problem is it plays sort of differently. It wants to be a 1.5 contender. I think it's high tier 2, low tier 1.5, like at the end. Like it's kind of sitting here. So I would say, yeah, I feel like 1.5, like the last of 1.5 though, is Shoutmon. The deck still does really well. It's explosive, but it doesn't have that support it needs, which it really does need to be able to combo off and be this crazy bad deck that we all know and love it can be. It just needs a little bit of extra support, a little TLC. Let's talk about the Shine Boy here. The rise of Shine Greymon from the trial deck. Definitely when the trial deck dropped, this is the main reason, besides the Gallantmon, that it became like a tier 1 deck overnight, because being able to have the guaranteed security checks and the Pierce was all it needed to be able to clear out security stacks like it was no other deck's business. I think the deck does fall off a little bit, and I still think it's a high tier 1.5 deck that is very explosive and is going to be like that budget friendly deck that you're waiting for, and I don't think you should sleep on it. Let's go over Gallantmon. Gallantmon did come out in the set where it's got the trial deck version, and then it has a Gallantmon counterpart where you can just heavily focus on Gallantmon. It just doesn't have this crazy win con most of the other decks do. So I think it's a tier 2 deck, like N tier 2, definitely. I think this is how this deck should work. And again, it's got a really nice warp Digievolution skill that Guilliman gave it, and it's really important to have that kind of thing. But you do rely so heavily on just trying to set up, get tamers out, that you don't really benefit too much like you're benefiting with Shine Greymon that is from yellow. So it's like this weird little deck that it wants to be like this top contender. But I think it's a low tier 2, close to hugging tier 3. Actually, you know what? We're gonna put it into tier 3. I feel more confident with tier 3 right now. It can get some wins, it can sneak some, but it's not like total garbage. So let's talk about Bonds of Courage. Bonds of Courage Agumon is just so good in this format. I think it's a solid, like, I want to give it tier 1 status, but we already know there's only one deck that kind of just in red that just overly benefits from being tier 1. I think Bond of Courage is high tier 1.5, maybe bottom of tier 1. I'm gonna go high 1.5, and then we're gonna say, because this deck has this really awesome power to be able to cheat in, then you can splash in maybe Ancient Greymon or even other support that just helps it out in the long run. You're playing like a Rookie Rush style deck with all Agumons, with Bonds of Courage being like your top end, and that deck really plays out phenomenally, and it just benefits so well. So don't sleep against this deck. I think it's really good. And next, let's talk about the Kingpin himself. We're gonna say that Jessamon is a tier 1 deck. There is no doubt in my mind this deck is tier 1 without a doubt. The deck plays so phenomenal. It's just really good. It just does everything. How do you feel about the red, guys? Let me know down in the comments. Like, would you place red in different ways? I think this is a really solid where red should be. Now let's dive into blue. So first off, we have all 4 Ridemyavatar coming back into the fray. It's got the new support from the trial deck, where it now has the Vmon to warp into this. Now you can play this kind of warp stylish engine, where now you can gain a bunch of memory, setting up, and just start clearing a house. It did see some play with Hexablaumon, but it's definitely high. I'm gonna go tier 2, high tier 2. I think it's a solid deck. It's combos off really well. It does crazy nutty things that most decks don't do, and it's just really good at the end of the day. We got blue green Rookie Rush, very popular deck. A lot of players love this Rookie Rush. The deck still is quite viable. We don't have a way of wiping off Rookie Rush off the face of the earth just quite yet. We need a few more sets, and I promise you this deck will probably just die out, or people get bored of it and want to play real decks. So we're gonna go 1.5 for the Rookie Rush deck. Still does what it does. It's a consistent engine that just laughs at your opponent. I'm gonna talk about Imperial Dramon. If this was EX, I would definitely throw Imperial Dramon probably in tier 1 just because of how much support it got. I don't think it's a 1.5 deck. I think it's a solid tier 2, probably the top high end of tier 2, just because the deck does so well. It's got jamming, it just clears security. The deck just is consistent incarnate, so I don't see this deck going anywhere. It's still super good. Azulaumon came into this format by storm, combining with Hexablaumon, being able to punish your opponent for having no evolutionary sources because you're setting up to force them to have none is so good. Azulaumon will be slept on, and I think, to be honest with you, it's gonna be one of those better decks because it's gotten the more support where it now can remove multiple sources. I think the deck is a solid 1.5 contender very easily. Old Hexablaumon, definitely with the new Azulaumon, really good. Hexablaumon though, I feel like if you were just building it with just Hexablaumon without Azulaumon and you're splashing in other things, Hexablaumon is still a great boss card. It just struggles heavily without probably a Zulamon. As you can see in this format, how often did it top? I think it's only gotten one in BT-5, so definitely don't worry too much about this deck. I think you're really gonna see what meta contender it is. I'm gonna say Garurumon, Bond of Friendship, mixed with our good friend Ancient Garurumon. Just combos so well. The deck is just night and day. The deck combos off. The deck can scare most opponents off real quickly because Gabumon, Bond of Friendship, multi-attacks on his own for 3, and then you have the Warp evolution from Ancient Garurumon that restands himself for 2 to 3. It's just so good. There's no, in my mind, why aren't you playing this deck? This deck is just so good. So guys, let's move on to the next color. We're going to talk about green next. Green next is just so good. Green has Nidhogg versions of decks, which I still think Nidhogg version decks, where it just main focus is like 3 to 4 Nidhoggs and then everything else is whatever you need to be, is still super good. And I think it's a high 1.5 contender. Just does what it needs to do. There's not many other decks that can just keep pace with the board wipe potential, resting, wipe the board, and call it a day kind of strategy this deck has. Just gains so much support and traction throughout it. Let's talk about Reflegiamon Control. I want to say still a lot of these decks require multi-attacks in this format. So being able to lock them down, prevent them from swinging to gain off their abilities, helps 10 times over what you think. So I think it's a little bit better than any Nidhogg variants, but Reflegiamon is just super good. I wouldn't sleep on Reflegiamon. A lot of people slept on Reflegiamon this format thinking it was too slow, but how many times I've topped with it, I don't regret playing Reflegiamon. Reflegiamon is just my girl, my bae. She's my everything. OTK Green still does OTK Green's stuff. There's not much else I can say about it. It's really good. I think it just slows down a little too much. It's a tier 2 deck. A lot of the other decks OTK a lot faster than it, and you're only 11k base at times if you don't see the Palmon, where the other decks are sitting at higher base attack points. Well, DP to clear out security threats. I think it's just a solid tier 2 choice. Don't get me wrong. I want to put green all in tier 1 at this point. I love green, but there's just so many other better decks. Hercules Kabuterimon comes into the fray. It's kind of like this weird stuff. It's very powerful deck. I think it's a solid tier 2 choice where the other decks can just shut down a lot of its resources and just outpace it. This deck still tries to keep tempo and resting stuff, but most decks just outpace it and kill off it or remove it quite quickly. There's a lot of other decks that try to do its job better. So let's talk about Ancient Troymon. Ancient Troymon is phenomenal of a card alone. The deck gets so much hype and power going into BT7 with more hybrids, but this card, I think I'm gonna put this in tier 1 for greens aspect, just because this deck can do what the deck can do. It controls Rookie Rush quite well. Most other decks don't handle wide boards as well as Troymon does, especially if you're not playing blockers. So Troymon, every time you swing, you rest 2 of your opponent's mons. This makes you survive so many turns. Ancient Troymon is such a powerhouse, and I think a lot of people will sleep on this deck. Don't sleep on Ancient Troymon. Get it as soon as possible. Play the deck. I promise you, you will not be disappointed by Ancient Troymon's power. So let's see. Last couple cards we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Eosmon. Eosmon, I'm going to be honest with you, can top locals, but it's just classified trash at this point. I want to say it's a great deck. It's got a green splash in it, but it just can't get there sometimes. It's a lot of high rolling into ultimates that you're playing down. Your opponent can't respond fast enough. Yes, this deck can just go off and off and off. But the problem is a lot of decks can just outpace this deck by tenfold. Even the lower end decks, it's not really powerful in the boss aspect. Yes, you gain free advantage, but you don't have this massive draw. You're a worse Rookie Rush deck. You're trying to be an ultimate Mega Zoo deck. You're just like a ultimate deck that plays 50 copies of a card. So I think it ends up in the trash. Sadly, our first trash pick. But hey, who else knows? We might see a few other decks reach the trash can before tonight's through. So let's dive right into the purple decks. Let's talk about this. Purple Rookie Rush fell off the earth real quick. It's still a great deck, don't get me wrong, but I feel like Purple Rookie Rush just falls behind way too quickly and just doesn't do what else it wants. So I'll give it trash kind of status because yes, it's a Rookie Rush deck, but it's a slower Rookie Rush deck with no control. Bouncing material, you're going to be using a lot of high expensive purple cards to clear out bigger mons that this deck, the other decks kind of just do without so much as an issue. So we're just going to say that right there. We'll talk about Lilithmon Loop. Really good deck. I think it's tier 1 status with the extra support that we get with Titanmons and stuff like that. The deck gets a little more consistent, more power behind it. Lilithmon Loop, again, had some struggles in the start off, but now with the memory boosters in it, the deck plays this much better with a little more consistency. So we'll see what else we can do with this, because remember, the memory boosters might cost 3 to play, but Lilithmon creates 2. And we also do have the Wizardmon that came in, so this also helps out with Lilithmon Loop being an added support card. Let's talk about Don Devi. Don Devi is surprisingly really good against heavy security control metas, where you can just slowly pick off security without having to bat an eye. I think we're gonna give it a tier 2 slot where it kind of deserves. It's not bad. I think it's right about here. This is where it belongs. Don Devi will sit here for now. The deck will top. It can take on. Don't also remember that a lot of decks, even though it might seem like there's just not higher, unless tier 2 could still beat a tier 1 deck, piloted under the right circumstances, under the right ideas. So don't think I'm hating on the deck. I love Don Devi personally, but again, it is a very slow deck. Let's talk about Tacticianmon decks. If Rookie Rush is prevalent in your locals, Tacticianmon definitely comes in clutch. But outside of that, if it's not, you're kind of just taking it too slow for them, and they'll just walk you. You don't want them to walk you, boys and girls. Chaos Gallantmon, definitely a tier 1.5 deck. It just ain't going anywhere. The deck can play off everything, build wide boards, just go where no deck has ever gone before. Just very powerful at the end of the day, and that's how that goes. Plutomon kind of falls off the face of the earth. It's a great deck. I feel like it falls down to tier 3 status. Yes, it's a great purple deck, but it's just drawing cards and trying to play service mons and other things, not fast enough like the other counterparts. So let's talk about Titanmon. Titanmon definitely coming in that tier 1.5 slot. We're going to give it right in there, right above Chaos Gallantmon. Titanmon's just really good, being with discard advantage, drawing cards. Again, like I said, with the Lilithmon, Titanmon combos really well with discarding, helping fuel Lilithmon faster, going to be stronger. So I definitely think that's another contender. And then we also do have Beelzestar, aka Three Musketeers. Three Musketeers, definitely one of the top 1 decks. It just clears out security. It controls the boards. It's everything a control deck you've been wanting to. Security control doesn't have anything on this deck. This deck is emphasis of security control on steroids. Played super well, and I'm very proud of this deck. So let's go on to yellow. Yellow is very interesting this format. So yellow has Shine Greymon. Hasn't done anything, but don't just go off and sell your shines until you're ready, boys and girls. Think just save on your shiny boys. Just hold on to them. BT-7 comes around the corner. You're going to just play out from there. Let's talk about War Greymon. War Greymon definitely gets a few extra support with Dynastamon in the deck. Dynastamon isn't really a deck, it's a support tech card. It's definitely a tier 2 deck. It's still playable. You have Lord Nightmon backing it up, everything like that. Lord Nightmon, I feel like falls at the end of tier 1. It gets pushed so far back. A lot of these decks are faster, stronger, more adapt. So even like a Lord Nightmon going against a, you know, our good friend here, Ancient Troymon, a lot of its stuff gets rested when they swing. So it doesn't matter where they can just spam out the Agumons, because the Agumon comes in play first, then you get to respond and rest it. So their blitz Agumon just completely gets shut down. So Ancient Troymon's just a little bit faster than Lord Nightmon, being able to control itself so much better. We have Mastamon splashed in with Lord Nightmon. I feel like it's a very powerful deck, and I think 1.5 really shows its worth. It's Lord Nightmon plus, it's a weird deck in itself. Mastamon fusion with yellow is always a great deck because we always take benefits from everything we do. Lose the security, well, we get to use it more because Dynastamon will replace it, build up board, stay, just Mastamon all around in general is super good. Next, let's talk about our good friend Starmon, the yellow Rookie Rush deck. The Rookie Rush decks aren't going anywhere. Yellow Green Rookie Rush is still a meta contender. I think it's still high 1.5, and I'm gonna put it here. It does what it does. It's consistent. It doesn't brick very often, so I don't think we need to discuss any further. Let's go over black decks now. D Brigade Rush. We could talk about D Brigade Rookie Rush as well, but I feel like they're both in the same kind of category. They both do quite well for themselves, but they just fall short. I think it's a tier 3 deck, but the deck will go off when it does, and under the right circumstances, this deck just goes for the cakewalk. So don't think I hate on the deck. I just feel like there are faster decks than it. Let's talk about the black Metal Garurumon that showed up. That deck would have put, probably most people put it at tier 1. I think it's still, it's a 1.5 deck that just has a great output for certain, against certain decks. Feel like it's a great control strategy, this Metal Garurumon, but black actually gets a deck that I would count as a tier 1 deck, mixing with Craniumons and other things. Just goes a long way. Let's talk about Diaboromon. Diaboromon is getting a support card, but I don't think that support card is enough to bring it above tier 2 status. I think it's low tier 2, but it's acceptable tier 2. I don't think Diaboromon is ridiculous 1.5, but I think it's a tier 2. Very solid list, isn't terrible, doesn't do crazy. When it goes snowballing, that deck will snowball all winter. But the problem is it does have its weak points. If you can control their board, prevent them from producing multiple tokens while blowing up their tokens instantly, it just doesn't matter in the slightest. And let's talk about the last black deck. And I think Genkomon is fantastic. I think it is low tier 1. This deck is definitely a 1.5 contender. It controls board, clears out Rookie Rush. It just keeps your opponent at bay all day long. There's nothing else most decks can wish to dream of to do. Genkomon has the blockers to keep up. Craniumon is in there to face off against the Alzastar. Security control decks just shut down to this deck because Craniumon exists. They don't run enough yellow to be removal heavy. And as long as yellow isn't heavy on the removal, Genkomon just walks the format. So don't sleep on that deck. Let's talk about Security Control and Megazoo are the last two decks we're going to talk about. I know we're going to splash this in with everything else, but I feel like Megazoo is, well, not Megazoo is at least a tier. To be honest with you, it's trash. I'm going to be honest with you. Megazoo is just straight trash. You're wasting too much resources on it. Yes, the deck can win. As I've said before, multiple decks can still win consistently under the right conditions, but Megazoo is one of those decks that are so heavily countered in this format now because there are so many great removals that this deck is just too slow to keep up. Security Control is another fantastic deck, guys. Let's put Security Control right here. I feel like it's a 1.5 deck. It still does what it does. You're going to be bored of playing against it. You're going to make your opponent want to wish he was going to quit. So Security Control still does security nuttiness. It also got so much boost and power up in the trial decks that they have new Geo Greymon and then the Cordramon Blue that lets them draw cards. Now they have advantage in their security. So definitely don't sleep on these decks, guys. How did you feel about the tier list, guys? Let me know down in the comments below. This is to help you guys get a better understanding of the format, get a better feel for the format, and hopefully you do enjoy. So guys, without further ado, remember, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!